Close your left eye. Look at the world through your right eye only. Now switch. Close your right eye. Look through your left. The view shifts. The angle changes. The slightly different perspective from each eye is what your brain combines into depth perception, the three-dimensional map of reality that allows you to judge distance, to catch a ball, to thread a needle, to navigate the physical world without walking into walls. Binocular vision. Two eyes, slightly apart, producing two slightly different images that the brain fuses into a single three-dimensional experience. That's the textbook answer. That's the explanation you were given in biology class. That's the reason the modern world says you have two eyes. And if depth perception were the reason, one eye would be enough. Because depth perception isn't the only way to judge distance. Close one eye right now and walk across the room. You can do it. You can navigate perfectly. You can judge distance through motion parallax, through relative size, through occlusion, through a dozen monocular depth cues that the brain processes effortlessly with a single eye. People who lose an eye don't lose the ability to function in three-dimensional space. They adapt within weeks. Depth perception from binocular vision is useful. It's not essential. And evolution doesn't build two of something at enormous metabolic cost just because the result is useful. It builds two of something because the organism cannot survive without both. So why two eyes? Not why is it nice to have two eyes? Why did evolution, operating under the brutal economy of survival, where every unnecessary structure is a metabolic liability that natural selection eliminates, produce and maintain two separate, enormously complex, metabolically expensive optical organs when one would have been sufficient for vision? This raises a simple but critical question. What are your eyes doing that isn't seeing? The deeper I went into the neuroscience of the visual system, the more I found that the answer to this question is so much larger than depth perception that the binocular vision explanation starts to look like a cover story. A tidy answer designed to satisfy the question without revealing what the eyes actually are. Because the eyes aren't cameras. They aren't passive receivers of light that produce images for the brain to interpret. They're regulators, they're calibrators. They're the primary environmental interface through which the brain synchronizes the body's internal chemistry with the external world. And they do this not through one channel, but through two. Two separate channels, one for each eye. And the two channels don't carry the same information. Start with what light does when it enters the eye. Because light doesn't just form images. Light entering the eye travels to the retina. On the retina, there are two types of cells that respond to light. The first type, the rods and cones, process visual information, images, shapes, colors, the experience of seeing. The second type, discovered only recently, are the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, iPRGCs. These cells don't contribute to vision. They don't help you see anything. They detect light, specifically the intensity and spectral composition of light, and they send that information not to the visual cortex, but to the hypothalamus, to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock of the body, the structure that governs circadian rhythm, that regulates sleep, that times hormone release, that synchronizes every biological clock in every cell in your body to the light-dark cycle of the planet. Your eyes are controlling your endocrine system, not metaphorically, measurably. The light that enters your eyes, regardless of whether you're paying attention to it, regardless of whether you're looking at anything in particular, is being read by specialized cells and transmitted directly to the brain region that controls when you sleep, when you wake, when your cortisol peaks, when your melatonin releases, when your growth hormone surges, when your body temperature drops, when your immune system activates its repair cycles. The eyes aren't just showing you the world. They're telling your body what time it is, what season it is, what the light conditions are, and how every biological system should be calibrated in response. The silence was deafening when I started asking why this function requires two eyes. as if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Because here's what the neuroscience reveals, that the textbook explanation omits. The two eyes don't send the same information to the same place. The visual pathways from each eye partially cross at the optic chiasm, the junction point where the optic nerves meet beneath the brain. At the chiasm, the nerve fibers from the nasal half of each retina cross to the opposite side of the brain, while the fibers from the temporal half stay on the same side. The result is that each hemisphere of the brain receives input from both eyes, but the input is lateralized. The left hemisphere processes more information from the right visual field. The right hemisphere processes more from the left. But the non-visual pathways, the IPRGC pathways that carry light information to the hypothalamus, don't follow the same routing. Research has shown that the non-visual light information from each eye reaches the hypothalamus through partially independent pathways. The left eye and the right eye contribute differently to the regulation of circadian rhythm, to the suppression of melatonin, to the activation of alerting responses. The two eyes aren't providing redundant information to the body clock. They're providing complementary information. Two channels, two slightly different readings of the ambient light environment. Two inputs that the hypothalamus integrates into a single regulatory signal. The deeper I went into the lateralization research, the more I found that the two eyes serve different regulatory functions that extend beyond circadian timing. Pull up the research on monocular light exposure and hormone regulation. Studies have shown that light entering the right eye produces a different hormonal response than light entering the left eye. The differences are small but measurable. The lateralization of light processing through the visual and non-visual pathways means that the two eyes aren't interchangeable from a neuroendocrine perspective. They're specialized. Each eye contributes a different component to the body's overall light-mediated regulatory system. And here's where the ancient traditions enter the investigation. Because every ancient medical and spiritual tradition that documented the function of the eyes described exactly this lateralization. Not in the language of neuroscience, in the language of their own frameworks. But the description is structurally identical. In traditional Chinese medicine, the right eye is associated with yang energy, active, outward, solar. The left eye is associated with yin energy, receptive, inward, lunar. The two eyes are not treated as identical organs performing the same function. They're treated as complementary organs performing different functions that together create balance. The right eye receives and processes the activating quality of light. The left eye receives and processes the calming quality of light. The two together regulate the body's energetic balance between activity and rest, between output and recovery, between the solar and lunar aspects of the daily cycle. In Ayurvedic medicine, the same lateralization appears. The right eye is associated with the Pingala Nadi, the solar energy channel. The left eye is associated with the Ida Nadi, the lunar energy channel. The two channels run on opposite sides of the body, carrying complementary energies that must be balanced for health. The eyes are the primary intake points for these energies, not the only points, the primary ones. The left eye feeds the lunar channel. The right eye feeds the solar channel. The body's health depends on the balance between the two inputs. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every ancient tradition that documented the function of the eyes. Egyptian mythology. The right eye of Horus is the sun. The left eye of Horus is the moon. The two eyes of the god aren't decorative mythology. They're a cosmological statement about the dual nature of light and its dual processing by the body. The right eye receives solar light. The left eye receives lunar light. The body requires both. The balance between the two governs health, consciousness, and the relationship between the physical body and the larger cosmos. And here's what modern neuroscience has confirmed without acknowledging the tradition it's confirming. The two eyes do process light differently. The lateralization is real. The hormonal responses to monocular light exposure are measurably different depending on which eye is exposed. The ancient traditions that described the right eye as solar and the left eye as lunar were describing, in their own vocabulary, a neurological reality that Western science has measured but hasn't integrated into its understanding of why we have two eyes. The deeper I went, the more the two-eye system started to look less like a depth perception mechanism and more like a regulatory interface. A dual-channel system for sampling the light environment and calibrating the body's internal chemistry. Two eyes, each carrying a slightly different spectral sensitivity, each connected to the regulatory centers of the brain through partially independent pathways, each contributing a different component to the integrated signal that the hypothalamus uses to govern the body's daily, seasonal, and circadian rhythms. Now here's where the investigation connects to something that affects you directly. Because if the two eyes are a dual-channel regulatory system, and if the regulatory function depends on unmediated light reaching the retina through both channels independently, then anything that alters the light reaching either eye differently from the other disrupts the regulatory system. Sunglasses, the same tint over both eyes, blocking the same wavelengths from both channels simultaneously, eliminating the spectral variation that the dual system is designed to detect, reducing the intensity of light reaching the IPRGCs below the threshold required for full circadian regulation. The sunglasses don't just dim the world, they degrade the regulatory signal. Both channels receive the same attenuated input. The complementary information that the system was designed to extract from two independent readings of the light environment is eliminated. Screens, the same spectral output hitting both eyes from the same source at the same distance. No lateralization, no complementary variation. The same artificial light dominated by specific wavelengths and deficient in others, entering both channels simultaneously with identical spectral content. The dual-channel system designed to extract regulatory information from the natural light environment receives a signal that is both spectrally impoverished and laterally identical. The regulatory system has nothing to differentiate between the two channels. The complementary function collapses into redundancy. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every modern technology that mediates between the eyes and the natural light environment. Prescription glasses with identical lenses that equalize what two slightly different eyes were designed to receive differently. Artificial lighting that bathes both eyes in spectrally identical, temporally constant light that provides no regulatory information about time, season, or environmental condition. Contact lenses that sit directly on the cornea, altering the refraction of light before it reaches the retina through a synthetic material that the eye's optical system didn't evolve to account for. Each technology was designed to improve vision, to correct deficiency, to protect the eye. And each technology, by treating the two eyes as identical instruments performing the same function, inadvertently disrupts the dual-channel regulatory system that the eyes were actually designed to operate. Here's what I keep returning to: the epidemic question, because the modern world is experiencing an unprecedented epidemic of circadian disruption, sleep disorders, hormonal imbalances, seasonal affective disorder, melatonin deficiency, cortisol dysregulation, the diseases of temporal dissonance that affect the majority of the industrialized population. And the primary interface between the body's regulatory system and the light environment that governs it, the two eyes, is mediated by technologies that degrade or eliminate the very signals the system depends on. The deeper I went, the more the two eyes started to look like the most important medical instruments the human body possesses, not for seeing, for regulating, for calibrating, for maintaining the synchronization between the internal chemistry of the body and the external reality of the light environment. Two channels, two complementary inputs, a dual system designed to extract maximum regulatory information from natural light and to translate that information into the hormonal, immunological, and neurological signals that govern every aspect of health. And the modern world covered them with sunglasses, pointed them at screens, bathed them in artificial light, corrected them with identical lenses, treated them as cameras when they were clocks, treated them as passive receivers when they were active regulators, treated them as one organ in duplicate when they were two organs in complement. I'm not telling you to throw away your glasses and stare at the sun. I'm telling you the eyes are not primarily visual organs. They're regulatory organs. That the two-eye system exists not for depth perception, but for dual-channel environmental sampling that governs the body's entire endocrine timing system. That the ancient traditions that describe the right eye as solar and the left eye as lunar were describing a neurological lateralization that modern research has confirmed. That every technology that mediates between the eyes and natural light, from sunglasses to screens to artificial lighting, degrades the regulatory signal that the dual-channel system was designed to process. I'm asking why the most important regulatory interface on the human body is treated as a camera in every biology textbook. I'm asking why the non-visual function of the eyes, which governs sleep, hormones, immunity, and circadian rhythm, occupies a footnote in ophthalmology, while the visual function occupies the entire field. I'm asking why the lateralized processing of light through two complementary channels has been confirmed by neuroscience and ignored by every industry that puts products between your eyes and the sky. I'm asking what your eyes are actually for, not what they show you, what they do to you, what they regulate, what they calibrate, what they tell your body about the world every second of every day through channels that have nothing to do with vision and everything to do with survival. Handed two eyes and told they were for seeing. What else have we been handed and never thought to question?